Pick it up. Good morning, friends, and welcome to the last talk before we have our summer break. Hope you're going to enjoy all this lovely weather which is going on out there afterwards. Today's talk is by our good friend David Saunders, who will be speaking on energy transition, communities delivering net zero. David.
Right, and I wasn't being very creative. Good morning, it's lovely to see you all. Welcome. Let's, I hope this will be a fun session despite the scary nature of the topic. I'm not being very creative about topic selection. It's actually the title of the Community Energy England Conference, which is being held in Bristol tomorrow. Energy transition, communities delivering net zero. So in a way, this is, I had no idea where I would be at mentally when Patsy asked if I'd do a session, but since it was Community Energy Fortnight, this time, so we are in Community Energy Fortnight, whether you knew it or not. And Community Energy England are having their first in-person conference for a couple of years, and it's in Bristol, which is exciting. And the conference itself is being sponsored. By the way, yeah, mostly, I think it's Ray we're getting some echoing from. So if you mute yourself when you're not talking, Ray.
That's me, I think. Hang on.
There's just a little bit of noise that I'm picking up on. I'm hearing a bit of an echo. Okay, that's good. Well, obviously, anybody can unmute at any time and jump in. Will be our protocol for today. I'm not planning to show any slides either. So this is going to be a chat show. And look, so you are, if you like, my archetypal ordinary people in some ways. You're not deliberately energy experts or whatever. You're a cross-section of the population. And I'm a bit of a nerd who has been thinking about community energy and so on. And I'd like to get the pulse of the room, if you like, because these are, desperately challenging times. There's fuel protests, so there's fuel price protests and cost of living protests in London tomorrow. We're all being hit by the, well, everybody's saying it's the Ukraine war is putting prices up. Whether that's true or not, it's being used as an excuse. We're becoming less and less equal as the super corporations figure out how to extract more wealth from our economies. And by the way, just a little bit of local news, 2 bits of news before I ask the question. One is that a company called Vanguard, there's a company called Vanguard and another called BlackRock, both of which own the majority of the world's corporations. They have massive subscriber bases of pension funds. They advise pension funds, and they were going to be in Bristol yesterday talking about their new sustainability criteria and funds. And Extinction Rebellion called them out on their claims, saying this is greenwash. There was nothing sustainable in what they were doing, that they were investing in fossil energy, deforestation, all the rest of it. And Vanguard chose not to come to Bristol. So that's quite interesting, that a little bit of community power can start to make even the most powerful multinationals have a bit of a think. But the other piece of news was that a friend sent me a copy of New Scientist, and this week's issue, 1.5 degrees in danger. And it's saying the chances of us restricting global warming to 1.5 degrees, negligible. flat chance, no chance. And there are some scientists who are saying that 3 degrees of global warming are inevitable. So I think about community energy and net zero in that context. But I just wonder how you all think, what you all feel, how worried you are about climate change. I've got 3 questions, and I'd like a few words from as many of you as are happy to share. How worried are you about climate change, number 1? Number 2, do you actually think that we can prevent things getting out of hand? Do you believe that things might get out of hand? And do you seriously think that we've got solutions, that we know what the solutions are and are going to do something, given who we have in power around the world at the moment? I'd just like to get some feelings from you rather than just dump a manifesto on you, as it were. So please unmute yourselves and just, you don't really have to wave a hand, just jump in and say what comes to your mind when I say, how worried are you about climate change? And do you actually think communities can do anything? Is a title like Communities Delivering Net Zero just aspirational claptrap? Or can we really do it?
David, I am, if I allowed myself to think about it every minute of the day, I wouldn't get out of bed. I'm that worried. Yeah. I have to blank it off. I am really worried, and I bottle it. I bottle it up because I can't cope with dealing with my frustration at the lack of action, and it makes me so emotionally upset that I have to restrain myself from expressing my frustration and anger at other people who aren't also upset. Yeah. The only way I'm coping with that, and I don't believe we're going to fix it. I don't believe we got the solutions, but I still think we need to do all the stuff that we can do to mitigate the worst effects. But then it's how do we cope with knowing that it's going to be very, very bad? And I don't know if it's in this forum or not, but I know I've mentioned it to others. There's a film called Once You Know that I thoroughly recommend you watch, because it gives some hope for how we need to be, not what we need to do, but how we need to be as communities to support each other when it all goes pear-shaped.
Yeah. Good morning, Susan. I just asked everybody to say a little bit about how worried they are about climate change, if at all. And Richard is worried, and whether you think that solutions are really possible. So I just wanted to get a feeling from the room, as it were, before I say a few words. Thank you, Richard. That's very, very moving to hear what you have to say. Angela?
Yeah, I try and keep up to date with what the thinking is. I changed to Ecotricity some years ago because they're just up the road in Gloucester. They seem to have thought through the issues, and Dale Vince, I think their CEO, does communicate to people who subscribe, how he sees the issues. So I think it's individuals trying to find out what the situation is. It's not helpful that we've got terrible media, not good information coming from the government. So I think you have to find your way around, join groups if you can. I don't know that we have solutions. I think it's a worldwide, we've got to work as a world, not just this little island. And I think that's, essential. If we don't work as one world, then yes, we are all doomed. But I think there are some hopeful signs. I think the difficulty is the number of right-wing leaders of many powerful countries at the moment, you know, Brazil, Russia, you could say here, and right-wing leaders, you know, potentially are dictators. Look at Russia. So that, you know, there's people who are thinking about it, and then there's politicians on the whole at the moment, right-wing politicians, who are more interested in their own power.
Yeah.
So I think we have to find...
Oops. You're freezing on my screen, Angela. I don't know what happened there. There's
Sorry, I won't say any more. I keep losing the connection, but you got the idea.
Jolly good. Yeah,
the idea of what I think.
Let's hear a few more. Who else can? Yeah, Susan.
I have been concerned for the environment for at least 50 years. I became a vegetarian stroke vegan 50 years ago for the sake of the environment. And I have lived as frugal a life as I could possibly do for the last years, partly because of the environment. So it's difficult to know what individuals do because the situation hasn't got any better. And my little bit has not made any difference whatsoever. So I'm quite dispirited.
Big concern, but not a strong sense of agency, being able to really small individual acts, but not influencing the big picture yet.
But also, I'm very aware of how a lot of the things that we do to improve the environment don't always work. So there was a big thing for biofuel a few years ago, which we now know was a disaster. Electric cars produce a massive amount of pollution because of their weight on the tyres. All these batteries for recycling and all the things to improve the environment require chemicals that are, and certainly the mining of them not only pollutes the environment but actually destroys the lives of individuals. So it's not just that it's almost like the answers can often cause more trouble than.
I'm certain that, thoughts go flashing off every time somebody says something, and I'm sure that's true for everyone, and it becomes endless. Ray.
I have a friend who works in Mumbai. His name is Imtiaz, and he works as a computer technician there. And he said Mumbai is rather like Victorian London in the smog days. He said you don't go anywhere during lots of people don't just go out during the daylight areas because it is so bad over there. And this is the pollution, this is the man-made pollution, which very large countries have at the moment. And unless they are prepared to tackle their own pollution, India, China, and others, we're just shouting in the wind. So am I concerned? Yeah, a little, but not too much, because, it's being the pragmatist who says, until the bigger countries start getting serious about it, England can do all it likes. It's a small country.
Any more for any more?
Well, I love animals, and I've come to love even insects in my declining years. And I relate very much better to other creatures than I do to humans, to be honest. And so I think about them in terms of climate change. My elder daughter has recently acquired, oh golly, what's it called? I'm going to forget. It's like a lizard, but bigger. It's got two words to its name. Damn it. It's very friendly and runs all over her body. It's quite big. It's only a foot at the moment. It's going to be 4 times that big. She claims it communicates with her well, and I must say, watching on the screen, it seems to. It made me think, because like a lot of people, I've been rather scared of scaly creatures. I don't feel scared anymore, and it does make me think, well, this is of course ignorant speaking, really, because I don't know that much about evolution. But it seems to me that if human beings seem determined to wipe away the beautiful things that we were given to take care of, we can perhaps at least hope that there will be different sorts of creatures altogether, maybe not lizards, but, other kinds of life, which will benefit from that, and it will all start over again. I am being probably far too optimistic, but that's my hope at the moment.
There will always be cockroaches.
Exactly.
Hattie, welcome. We're just going through letting people say a few words about their concerns for climate change and whether they feel that solutions are actually possible. After which I intend to quite briefly tell you some latest news. Any more? Anybody want to say anything more? Yes.
Just a quick comment. Yeah, I am very concerned. And I lead a very busy life, and I'm involved in all sorts of things, but every now and then, and usually at least once a week, I stop and think, why bother? Why am I doing this or that? But I think, a bit like Richard, if I didn't keep busy and put one foot in front of the other, I wouldn't get out of bed either. And I still, will do every little bit that I can, but it increasingly feels like the issue is with the people in power and government. They really need to deliver on the promises that they've made, and there's very little sign of that happening, and certainly at the speed necessary to make an impact.
Great. So the same thing, deep concern about the problems and the possibility of any real solution. Anyone else? Otherwise, any more for any more? Okay. So, friends, I share your concerns, obviously. I've been, and even going that far back, when I was still a student, Silent Spring came out and the Limits to Growth report for the Club of Rome, and I started to pay attention to what was going on in the world and the environment. And eventually shifted my life to, well, what can I do? And the answer is, surprisingly little. When looking at it on the big scale, I can run around, I can talk about solar, I can organize a little project. And I can watch trends in the world. I can see things happening. I can see good stuff and bad stuff. I only learned the other day that the Norwegian government tax oil extraction from their North Sea reserves at 87%, whereas we sometimes tax at 0%. And they say, you may think that's extremely high, but we use that to create a sovereign wealth fund to create a better quality of life for our country. And we have people who are up for it. We offer the concessions and people say, I'll work with you at that price. So we've got people who are prepared to work at that price. So that's what we do. Whereas we seem to be fighting to the other end. Let's see if we can't give it away for free and exploit all the oil and just live off campaign contributions from energy companies. So I think about these things, and I've made lots of notes about the past and the future, and in the last years, we've had, there have been successive waves of people getting more and more evolved, from the Rio Earth Summit with its Agenda 21, the transition movement coming into being, Extinction Rebellion, school rebellions with Greta Thunberg, wonderful long-lived David Attenborough, who has, spoken beautifully about the environment for what feels like many generations now, and given inspiration to people to think about the environment. And Extinction Rebellion has spun off movements like Insulate Britain and Just Stop Oil, and we see people who are deeply committed and deeply concerned, gluing themselves to buildings, getting taken to court, the government tightening up the laws to make it easier and easier to say that you are protesting and we're going to put you away for longer. And we're not seeing the solutions. And there was a big wave of cities declaring that the Paris climate change goals were not good enough. 2050 is too far away. We've got to get to carbon neutral before then. So Bristol was, of course, the lead city to declare unanimously to set a goal for getting to carbon neutral by 2030. And then the question is, what have we actually done? And do people in Bristol feel that it is going to happen? The mayor set up a hugely ambitious plan called City Leap and announced that he wanted to tackle inequality and unfairness and our poor economy with City Leap and attract inward investment that he couldn't get from the government. And then basically he sort of disappeared for 4 years, and the council set up a project team and has recruited 2 multinational companies to come to Bristol to set up a heat network that will reduce emissions for some of our buildings. And it's a £400 million heat network. It's quite a big deal. It's based on things that they have done in Amsterdam and Berlin. You can't really complain. But the whole procurement process was done in great secrecy. We still don't know what's happening. And it grants an exclusive contract to somebody from outside the city to do something. And just having that in process has stopped us from thinking, what are we going to do for the rest of our emissions? Because that's less than 10% of the city's emissions. What are we going to do for the rest of it? So I've been working with a group called SERA, Socialist Environmental Resource Association, and I've been an Extinction Rebellion member, and I've been a member of Earthquakes, which is a Quaker affinity group who are mostly active in finance. We've done protests against BlackRock, and we showed up at HSBC's AGM this year, and a group sang to the assembled throng, and we get good media coverage. But the news is not great. Companies like BlackRock and Vanguard have got exceptional resources, trillions under management, and they have these incredibly powerful artificial intelligence engines running the companies and trading and figuring out how to make the very last penny out of finance, out of capital, how to crank up capitalism, which is what creates the unfairness. And at the weekend, there was a tent festival in Queen's Square. And there were 4 or 5 tents there. And this group had organized politics debates. And so on the hour, you could go to a different tent and you could see in the program who was talking where. And a friend called me and said he'd got a spare ticket. Would I like to go along? I had no idea what it was even about. So I went along, and I, went from tent to tent and started absorbing things. And there was Darren Jones, MP for Bristol North West, who is chairman of the Commons Select Committee for BEIS, Business and Environment. So this is Business and Politics Select Committee. And he was sitting there, and he's a lovely guy, and he was talking very clearly and coherently. And I just brought up the issue of City Leap, and I said, you're right at the center of this. You are there where business talks to politics. And I mentioned the Benjamin Franklin quote, which is, democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting about what's for dinner, right? And the two wolves are, of course, business and politics, and the lamb is us. And then Benjamin Franklin says, freedom is a well-armed lamb contesting the result, right? And so my question is, so when I see something like City Leap, I don't immediately think this is going to be wonderful for Bristol. I think what's going to go wrong. And I asked Darren, I said, what do you think has gone wrong with City Leap? Do you think it's gone wrong? And what do you think the problem is? And he said, well, you're going to say procurement, aren't you? And I went, yes, exactly right. Procurement is nothing to do with hiring a hooker for the night. Procurement is how government puts contracts out for tender. And there's a thing called the Official Journal of the European Union. And when government decides to do something, it issues documents saying, we're interested to find people who are interested in this. The idea is to make it fair and open for everybody. But what it actually means is only people who know how to do procurements can actually tender. And it means we don't have a dialogue about how we can do this ourselves in our community. So last week we had a bit of a math lesson, and what I've been doing, and I haven't heard, we're all feeling frustrated, but do we know how much it will cost to get Bristol to carbon neutral? And the answer is most of us haven't got a clue, right? And there is a wonderful, wonderful book that I want to commend to you all called Climate Jobs. If we were talking a year ago, I would be holding up copies of The Green New Deal by Anne Pettifor and a book called What We Need to Do Now by, I've forgotten his name. How can I do that? Chris Goodall, What We Need to Do Now. And this is the latest version. It's a pamphlet that was produced a while ago by a group of trade unionists, and they've reissued it, rewritten it and reissued Climate Jobs, Building a Workforce for the Climate Emergency. In the notes for this talk, I'll put a link, but the book itself is available as a PDF for free, along with lots of really good technical detail to go with it. And there's chapters on why we need to act, the urgency of now, keeping the lights on with renewables, jobs in energy generation, distribution and storage, warm homes, healthy workplaces, climate jobs in buildings, creating a green, affordable and accessible network for all, climate jobs in transport, decarbonizing processes and materials, climate jobs in industry. So see, they're thinking not just about, renewable energy, working the land, climate jobs in food, agriculture and nature, towards zero waste, climate jobs in the circular economy, and building a movement, trade unions and beyond, what you can do. And what they're saying is, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to do it. We're not going to solve this unless we act at a big level. What have we done with crises before? Well, we had a healthcare crisis and we formed the National Health Service. We did something huge. We made a drastic tradition and we created a wonderful new system to help people with health, free for everyone. And after the war, we created a massive effort to create genuinely affordable homes. Councils out making, let's undo the bombing and let's make homes that are fit for people to live in. Let's do it all over the country. And the trade unions are now saying what we need is climate jobs. We need a national climate service to create the jobs, have them be unionized jobs, have there be training, have there be wages for all, and how much work needs to be done. So they started to look at how much energy we need to generate. So they actually have a fairly good idea of how many people you would need to switch from petrol cars to electric cars, and how much less it would be if we switched to electric bus networks than we just replaced our petrol-driven road-based car system with an electric car system. And I think this is wonderful. It's a really great book. I've started going to meetings with these people. And Sarah has been starting to do the other thing. My only complaint about this book is you're waiting for a change of government for this to happen, right? You're not going to get a national climate service unless you vote in a government that has it as policy. So you've got a load of work, so it's a great idea, and I think it is a great idea, but how do we get it going? It's far more urgent than waiting for an election. So Sarah had already done one of its, we've been doing a series of reports on energy and renewables and things like that, thinking stuff out and discussing it at our meetings, not taking it any wider because we didn't reach conclusions. But by the time of COP26, we said, what if all our inner city mayors got up at COP26 and said they are going to take their city carbon neutral by 2030? And our regional mayor, Dan Norris, says, great idea. But other people said, well, we haven't actually figured out how we're going to do it. So it's a bit premature to stand up and say we're going to do it when we don't know how. We need the plan. And this climate jobs booklet is starting to put the numbers there. So it turns out they say, we think that the amount of energy we need to generate renewably is 700 terawatt hours. You'll have no idea what that means. How much energy is that? It's obviously a lot. And it's significantly less than the energy we currently use. Because in switching to electric heating and electric vehicles, we will end up using less energy. So 700 terawatt hours. And if you look at Bristol and its share of the UK population, turns out we need somewhere close to 5 terawatt hours, where whatever it is, less than 1% of the UK population in Bristol City and Greater Bristol Metro is a bit more, but Bristol City would need about 4.65 terawatt hours of energy. That's not just electricity for our homes, that's the energy we put in our cars, that's the energy for industry. Still doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's a number, it's a useful number. How much renewable energy would you need to generate that? Well, it turns out, so, I'm the nerd here, I'm the nerd in the room, and it's fairly simple numbers. It turns out that if we had £1 billion worth of solar energy, and we had £1 billion worth of wind energy, that would make about 4.585 terawatt hours of energy. So it turns out that all the energy we need to run Bristol could come from £2 billion worth of renewable energy. Still a lot, it's a huge amount, but it's a number. Of course, anybody who's got these little rockets in their head that go roaring off, immediately we know that wind is intermittent and so is solar. So you're going to have to spend some money. to store it, to balance supply and demand. So, well, you know, I've fooled around with this, and I think that 2 billion, another 2 billion, would do a fair, I'm not saying anything negative, another load more money, some of which would go to more generation, some of it will go to batteries, some of it might go to building a hydrogen economy, some of it might go to hiring pumped storage in Wales, some of it might go towards a barrage in the Severn, but another couple of billion in our case, so that's 4 billion. And everybody's saying that we need to retrofit our housing to reduce the demand. There's a real problem with that. What you can do with renewables is, once you've put that up, you can charge people for the electricity. If you just go round insulating people's homes, it's quite hard to collect money on the savings. But if you say, well, let's do £1 billion worth of retrofits anyway, it comes to the figure of 5 billion. It's a number that 5 billion, you know, where would you get that? Where would you even get that from? And the answer is you borrow it from a bank. But how would you pay it back? And you would pay it back out of your income from selling the energy. So how much income do you get from selling 3.58 terawatt hours? And the answer is, at 16 pence a unit, it's 572 million. 572 million would pay off 5 billion in less than 10 years. So it isn't a question of government are going to have to put money in it. It's like, this is viable. How much does Bristol actually spend on energy at the moment? The answer from a report that's been created by the council with the help from the university is that we actually spend £868 million a year on energy. So this 572 million is less because we need less renewable energy than we need fossil energy. And, you know, I can imagine all sorts of, having said this and said, what do you think? We would now immediately use up at least 20 more minutes, perhaps an hour more or 2 hours where everybody sounds off, well, I know about this and I know about that. And this is the problem. As soon as you get people together to discuss this stuff, you end up with endless debate. And it's hard for people to exit from a room saying, I've got a real feeling that we're going somewhere and that we've got a plan and we're going to do it. So Sarah has been thinking about how do you create a plan, and everybody's got different, that's just what I've just said is one first really, really rough cut at what's the size of the job. How much will we need to invest? Where can we get the money from? How will we pay for it? And the answer is we need to invest somewhere around 5 billion, double that if you look at the Quaker area. But the income that we would get from charging people for the energy, at the moment we spend 868 billion a year on energy. Where does it go? The answer is outside Bristol. It goes to oil companies, it goes to electricity companies, it goes to gas companies, it goes to transport companies, it goes to airlines. All that money disappeared from Bristol, from the Bristol economy. So if we went around Bristol and said, you know, 250,000 people here, divided into 868 million, I want your 2,000 quid, which I'm going to send out of Bristol to everybody. And if I tried doing that, I wouldn't get away with it. But that's what happens. 868 million pounds a year leaves Bristol forever, doesn't come back, and it goes up in smoke. It goes up in carbon emissions. It pollutes the atmosphere. It causes global warming. We are subsidizing global warming to that extent. Now, you know, so some of you are buying your electricity from Dale Vince, but I assure you that most of that 868 million isn't buying renewables. If we invested 5 billion in renewables, energy bill would go down and every penny of it would be buying renewable energy. And every penny of it, apart from the money going to banks to pay interest, would be circulating in the local economy. So the question is, Could we start doing that sooner rather than later? So this has been bubbling through my head for the last week or so, and I finally feel I'm getting somewhere. So I nobbled Darren Jones after his little chat, and I said, "Oi, Darren, you know, we've got 5 MPs in Bristol. We've got 5 constituencies in Bristol, right?" And he went, "Yeah." And I said, "I want to arrange for £1 billion investment in your ward, in your constituency. I want to arrange for £1 billion to be spent in your constituency. And I want you and your constituents to help do it. Creating jobs, getting us renewable and all the rest of it. I want you to stop talking to business and start working with your constituents, right? You have little groups around energy and housing and transport, right? All the topics in this book. And you could start thinking, you won't be investing £1 billion straight away, but maybe we can find 5 or 10 million to do solar energy and some retrofits in a street in Northwest Bristol. And we can do the same in 5 others. And we don't wait until the next election. And maybe some MP says, well, I'm not interested in doing that. And you say, oh, I bet there's somebody who'd like to be MP in your area who would be interested, right? So this is something that can't be held up, in my view, right? So what I have is, every so often, being a nerd, I worry about these problems. And then one day I wake up and I think, I've got it. I've figured it out. I've got the solution. I can see how it's going to be done. And then, gradually I discover that I got it completely wrong, and all the objections that there will be come up, and we find that this isn't going to happen. And then I come back again a year later and I've got another look at it. But what has happened, what's changed, is that when we started looking 10 years ago at renewable energy, I had a friend who spent £12,000 putting 2 kilowatts of solar on his roof, because that's how much it cost then. Now you can get 5 kilowatts of solar for 2,000 quid from a wholesaler, and a community group doing solar could put it on a roof for 1,000 quid. And the roof would generate more this year than the one done 10 years ago, because the panels are 400 watts per panel now instead of 200 or 250. So things have improved, and we've gone past this threshold where, and so, like I said, the £4 million that Ambition Lawrence Weston have spent on a wind turbine, the problem with doing a wind turbine is you don't know how much you're going to get for the electricity, right? You don't know if you're going to get paid a low wholesale price on, it's called a power purchase agreement, maybe only £3 a unit. Well, it turns out that because of uncertainties, and you pay 16 to 20 pence a unit for retail electricity. Well, they've been offered 20 pence a unit. Well, 10 pence a unit would be high. If they were paid 10 pence a unit for the 3,000 megawatt hours a year, each megawatt, that's it, they would generate 120,000 megawatt hours a year. So I've got 100 quid for that. That'd be £1.2 million a year income for having spent £4 million to build their wind turbine. It's paid for in 3 years. Doesn't matter what price you get for electricity after that. You can give it away for free after 3 or 4 years. Or you can get an income that you're going to distribute to your community, which is what they're going to do. And I go to them and I say, Charles, because it's Charles who's the project manager, right, for this. And I say, Charles, I've got a question for you about this big field that you're going to put your wind turbine on in Avonmouth. And he says, yeah, what? And I say, have you thought about putting solar panels on that field? And he goes, oh, no, don't. They didn't have the bandwidth to think about that. It was impossible. What they were trying to do was impossible, not doable, and is now being held up as an example of communities' triumph, the restart of land-based wind energy for communities in this country. And you say, well, now, I said, well, could you look at it now? Well, yeah, you know, as soon as we've got the field still, we'd have to go back and ask for planning permission, but there's room for several megawatts of solar, and we could put some storage there as well. So they could take what they've got and build on it and improve it. And this is the possibility. As soon as you've got funded project teams working full time, instead of you or me waking up in the morning and having this, oh, it's wonderful, here's the sun, and the birds are tweeting, and God's in his heaven, and oh shit, we've got a climate crisis and a war in Ukraine. You know, am I going to implode today? Or, you know, am I bipolar? Which side of my bipolar me am I going to be today? Am I going to be desperation and suicidal? Or shall I go and spend some time with my friends and sit in a cafe and not worry about it and enjoy the sunshine, right? But here's the possibility. The possibility is that with just the simplest piece of analysis, which needs a load more work. When some friends and I started thinking about buying an agricultural college and turning it into an environmental university, we spent £120,000 talking to the community about what they would like and working with architects and environmentalists on what an environmental university would look like. Well, out of that 5 billion, something like half, at least 2 billion of that 5 billion will go on climate change jobs. It will go on young people learning how to create green transport, green housing, renewable energy, and all the rest of it. And they could meander from project to project, learning more and more about us being environmentally self-sufficient. And instead of thinking, I've got to go to university, I'm going to end up with a student loan, I'll be in debt for the rest of my life, I'll never buy a house. It's, oh, I'm going to work on Bristol's green plan, I'm going to be paid all the way through it, I'm going to learn everything I need to know, I'm going to make friends, I'm going to become an environmental leader, and by the time we're done, I'll know how to build an eco-village, totally affordably. And that could be Bristol's future over the next 10 years. And the question, there's 1,000, I can, you know, if I, you know, let's all unmute and say a few words. And the point is, unfortunately, due to the structure of this event, you've let me have half an hour to do my rant after you had 20 minutes to register your concerns. Now we could spend the rest of the day on this. But what I want to do is to start having meetings where people contribute to a plan where what they say doesn't just end up on flip charts and post-its, goes into a plan, and you start to see, here's the book that tells what we're going to do. And guess what? They're already working on, I don't know, putting solar on the roof of Saxon Street in St. Werburgh's or whatever. And we're figuring out how to do twice as much next year. It turns out if you spend 4 million on wind this year, if you spend 4 million and you figure out you've got a team now and you're going to do twice as much. So you're going to put 2 turbines in, I don't know, Weston-super-Mare. And you go to Weston-super-Mare and you say, I want to put 2 wind turbines up. And they say, oh, not in my backyard, we don't want it. And we're saying, guess what? Half the energy is going to go to Bristol and half of it's going to go to Weston-super-Mare. And we're going to give money to Weston-super-Mare. Oh, that's interesting. You're not a nasty developer. So if you spent 4 million and next year you did twice as much, so that's 2023, 8 million, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 1 billion. But actually go back because you know, that adds up to 2 billion. So by 2030, we just by doubling every year, starting low, 5 or 10 million, and then doubling, we could be at the bit, we could have done it. We could have cracked it across the region, and other regions could do it. And we could go to COP27 and COP28 and say, guess what? It is the policy of the United Kingdom government to have parties during COVID and do all kinds of stuff. And it really doesn't matter because the MPs and their constituents have figured out to decarbonise the country, and we've got a plan, and we're on the case, and it's happening. And this could be done anywhere. All you need is honest people to work together with each other and not have the focus be on dishonest politicians lining their pockets. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's why we have a war in Russia at the moment, because one president of the Ukraine said, let's set up an honest democracy. And the Quaker Friends in Moscow, they had a great talk about this. And when the guy running Friends House in Moscow was asked, why do you think Russia invaded Ukraine? He said, Putin can't have an honest government. The people of Ukraine were figuring out how to do a flourishing democratic government. That is totally unacceptable to Putin. Well, we are being run out of Londongrad, and we have the same corruption corrupting every aspect of our economy. And I think the only way we're going to put it right is by communities setting up as honest Indians, looking around for MPs who are prepared to be honest and work with their community, rather than go to Westminster and collect their king's shilling. And then we get on with it. So that's I had no idea when Patsy asked me to do a talk that things were crystallizing around a plan for our trades unions and our people to decarbonize the country. I don't think that community energy groups have got a clue how to decarbonize the country, but I think that our communities working together are starting to have an idea, and I think it's doable. And so I'm starting to talk about it, and you are the first group that I have talked to, but I pitched an MP last Sunday and he said, let's talk some more. What do you think? What if we all went and started bashing on our MPs' doors and saying, I want a climate change solution. I want you to help us invest $1 billion in our constituency. I want us to be carbon neutral by 2030. No ifs and buts. Do you want my vote? Will you set up a meeting? Let's get this moving. Okay, please all unmute and shout at once, or in any order you like. What do you think? Do you think? I mean, you're listening to a nerd, right? And what this nerd has been doing has been trying to make this as arithmetically simple as possible so that you can see it's doable. It's insanely huge and it's incredibly doable. £1 billion for a city to spend, nothing. That's, the city has that budget anyway. Let's get on with it. Sorry, I'm going to stop.
David, you're asking us to be the small local Zelenskys to persuade others to join something. Where are our local Putins who are going to shoot us down?
Well, the local Putins are, the point is, when you after you have an election, you get all sorts of promises in an election. But after an election, what you get is the council and the MPs, and they're in the existing system, right? So I'm not asking you to be a Zelensky, but when a Zelensky spoke up and publicized his ideas through 2-year-long television series, what would it be like if we had honestgov.org? He won by a landslide. So what if we, not as Zelenskys, but we go around looking for the Zelensky and saying, amongst us, there's this lovely story of a monastery that is falling apart, and they don't know what to do, but they invite some priest to come and talk with them. And the priest says, I haven't got any. He cries with them. He says, I haven't got any idea. I don't know what to do. But I just want to leave you with this thought. One of you is the Messiah. One of you is the Messiah. And they all start thinking, who could that be? Is that true? Gosh, who could that be? Maybe it's brother something. No, he's too, And they all start thinking, maybe it is this person. And they all start treating each other with just a little bit more respect and a little bit more love, because one of them is the Messiah. So the point of view, one of you is the Zelensky, right? And when the Zelensky says the right thing, then everybody will vote in a landslide for doing the right thing, and we'll start doing it. Triodos, you can go along to Triodos Bank and get 5 or 10 million to put some solar up, right? It's not a problem. So, and you say to Triodos, well, we want 1 billion. And they say, oh, we're not on that scale. And they say, all right, what scale are you? And they say, well, 5 million, 10 million. And you say, all right, that'll do for this year. Might be twice that next year, but, right? So you just get started. So maybe you're not all Zelenskys, but maybe if we start thinking about it, we'll start to think, well, Patsy, she has great ideas and she loves doing this. And Graham's always ready to, be controversial, and Richard really cares. We start to learn more about each other and what we could do. What could you do in this? Well, I don't know, but I'm really interested in this. Oh, we're having a meeting about that on Thursday. Hattie, unmute and say it.
Yeah, where is the meeting and who's having it when?
Lovely. There is a follow-up meeting with this group. The trades union group are holding a meeting, and they're planning on holding a big meeting in September. And I'm saying, well, let's the meeting, the first meeting in this series was scheduled for 11 a.m. today. And guess what? We're having it, right? Before that, there wasn't a meeting scheduled, right? The next meeting is, well, we've had meetings in, there's a clue here in the third word of this phrase, Quaker meeting houses.
Good for you, David. Thank you.
We have the potential to be the hosts for these meetings and to help people have these conversations. And what I do, I don't stand up at events. I was sitting in Hamilton House one day, 12 years ago, and somebody from the council said, we've set the goal to reduce emissions by 42%. And I said, that's fantastic. Why not 100%? And he said, it's not a requirement. And I said, for the council or for life on the planet? And he went, no, well, for the council and everything, this is what Friends of the Earth were asking for. We're made up that we're going for 42%. And I said, could we put just some of the money that you're putting into it, could we put that into having an event about 100%? Just to start thinking about it. And we held the first Zero Carbon Bristol conference 12 years ago, right? At which people said, let's have a show of hands, right? Less than a third of the people thought that it was possible to get to carbon neutral. We did not mention any date at all. Didn't want to frighten the people. About a third of people thought it was possible, and about a third weren't sure. That was 12 years ago. A couple of years ago, we voted to be carbon neutral unanimously by 2030, right? So we move on and we learn. So it's like, let's keep talking, let's keep thinking. Hattie.
David, I liked an idea that you mentioned earlier on, which was about having strict local participation in climate change actions. That was not today, but the talk you gave before. I liked that, and I just thought, I can't see it happening in my street. And I suppose I disempowered myself from doing anything about it. That's one difficulty, is getting local people active and thinking about it. And feeling supported to do something about it. Then another issue, I think we have to factor in financially, is maintenance and renewing the equipment that provides the energy. So I guess that's all got to be factored in.
Absolutely. The idea of street level conversations, you know, there are some streets who have applied for grants from the council to figure out how to put solar on their streets. So it does happen. You know, but at the start, why not do it at the constituency level? You know, see if there are enough people, if there's a critical mass who at least show up at an event. And yeah, the maintenance and everything, community energy groups are pretty much used to figuring this stuff out. You repower a wind turbine. In fact, if you've got a 4 megabyte wind turbine, you say, well, you know, let's make it 7 when we repower it, you know, and so on. So, and with solar panels last about 20, 30, 40 years. Some maintenance is required, but it's not huge. So yes, you have to have budgets for running your energy company. When I say paying off 5 billion with 700 million a year income, you wouldn't pay it off in 6 years, but you might pay it off. You might choose to pay it off in 20 years. And some of the income is used for maintenance, and some of the income is used to subsidize people in fuel poverty. And all of that, you know, that's why you get somebody. There is small funding available for groups to figure out how to do projects. It's seed money allows you to do the planning, and you bring in consultants who put in industry standard numbers and turn the handles on the machines, and you end up with, look, this is what's possible. And
David, we're an island nation. What about wave power?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, what about tidal power? Some people like it, some people hate it. When the government announced Hinkley C, it was at the same time as they dropped a 7 barrage proposal. Do we need a 7 barrage? Absolutely not. Until the sea level rises 7 meters, which is what you get for free when just the Greenland ice cap melts. Don't ask me what you get when the Antarctic ice cap melts, because it will only make it harder for you to sleep at nights. But 7 meters you get for free just from Greenland melting, and it's melting faster and faster. So tidal power and wind power, very important. Actually, fairly expensive. Tidal power and wave power. Wave power is particularly expensive, but you know, you do. So we all have our ideas, and then you go out and find the facts. You find the numbers, and you have debates. You bring people in who are experts. And you start to say, we are wanting to do this. We can imagine that we could put together this kind of budget. Are we on track with our numbers? And you can go to the university, and they will quite happily put together a project team at the Cabot Institute and tell you whether you think you're on track or not.
But wave power is only expensive because no one has done any development about it since Mr. Salter and his duck.
Yeah, I would alter that. Go and do a Google search, Ray. You will find tons and tons and tons and tons of work. You build cylindrical tubes with hinges in them and generators at the hinges. And it's very hard to make them so that they will both move in a light sea and not break up in a heavy sea. It's really, really difficult. It's really expensive. We've done it. The Chinese have done it, but it's just more expensive than wind power. So, you know, there are all kinds of people. I have a collection of the ideas which I think of as fringe, because we all, you know, you could do this. So there's a lovely guy who wants to put barges in the Severn with turbines in them, you know, between the barges with you know, like water wheels and everything. Well, yeah, great. It's lovely. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely idea. But off the coast of Orkney, they have exactly that with proper underwater turbines on it. They've figured out how to do it optimally, and they're doing it. So, you know, and the question is it good enough? It's great for Orkney. It works for Orkney. They've got loads of tidal power, but there is not enough tidal power to power the entire United Kingdom. So there is enough wind power. You could fill the North Sea with wind energy, and it would generate more energy than we need to run the entire country, and we could be exporting energy to Europe. It would have to be in the form of hydrogen, because it's not, you know, as soon as you've got more wind power than we use at peak demand on a particular day, it's like, what use is this energy? So you, with renewables, you have to very quickly start thinking about storage. And this is the point. You're now asking questions, and I'm giving you feedback, and I'm saying we could fill a room with experts, and you can get all the knowledge you need. And then it becomes a matter of, okay, well, we need to work with our local FE college and start training young people. Let's train a team of solar roofers, and let's raise enough money to put solar roofs down how many streets?
And David, why aren't all the new houses being built required to have solar energy?
Exactly. Because there isn't enough pressure. There isn't enough pressure at the moment. There isn't a Zelensky saying we have to do this, and there's a government who are just fudging figures and, you know, making sure that their flats are well decorated. So you know, let's get a room and put up some of them things and give people sticks, and all have a good screen and smash things for a while that don't matter too much, like straw bales. And then let's come back and say, right, what do we need to do? And let's start doing it. But the point is, until you give people the idea that here is a plan that we could all work on, then every single one of you is thinking about, this is what I think we need to do, and that's what I think we need to do. And you end up collectively doing nothing, because you don't see how you can get this country to carbon neutral and save the world. As soon as you've got a plan that says, do you know what? We've got a plan to get to carbon neutral that's going to cut our energy bills, not put them up. And it's going to create jobs for young people, free university education. And I'm going to get a warmer house and solar on my roof. And I don't have to pay for it. The money's going to come from a pension fund that's got too much money. How cool is that? You're muted, Hattie, but I see you're not. And you're doing what I call in German Bügeltherapie, which is ironing therapy. It's a wonderful thing to do during. There's a guy who has made a recording of himself sitting and watching a video, and he plays that while he's in Zoom meetings so he can get on with other stuff. It's even better than turning your screen off. Patsy.
No, I'm just waving my pen around. Sorry.
Ray's wanting to wrap us.
Okay, folks. Can
we have hands up? Do you feel a bit more hopeful about something being possible? Would you like to be part of it?
Of course, one always wants to be part of things like this, you know. Why wouldn't one, you know, in that respect?
So you'll go away and you think, oh, yeah, but. And then the question is to keep coming back together and saying,
oh, right.
Yes, and, no, and. And, you know, how long shall we give ourselves to do a plan? And what I found when I wanted to do my first solar project was you maybe needed 6 people with different specialties sitting at a table. And each one of them could explain perfectly well why somebody else's job was difficult, but their bit was easy. And so you eventually tell them to shut up and you say, don't talk about the other person's job. Can you do your bit? Can we get the finance? Yes. Can we get the roof? Yes. Can we get the solar panels? Yes. Is there anybody who'd like to use the electricity? Yes. We've got a project, right? So, you know, you find the people who think it might be possible and who have the answers, and you put them in a room and you say, talk about all the problems, but talk about whether you can do your bit of the solution as well. Thank you.
Well, folks, that is us until September. We hope you will come and join us in September, or Patsy and I will feel very lonely.
Great.
So until then, thank you, folks. And no doubt we will see each other around during that time.
Great.
Bye.
Bye. I can't end the meeting.